Thank you. So, once upon a time, there was a little African girl who traveled the seas. She lived all over the world. She saw the statues, she saw the sculptures, learned different languages, knew all about cultures. But no matter where she would go, how near or far, there was always one thing that remained in her heart. To be a storyteller on stage and on screen, to be an actor, yes, this was her dream. To entertain and educate, how hard could it be as Joan of Arc, a spy named Kate? Oh, the possibilities. But little did she know that for this career, she'd have to do a lot of work to overcome her fears. She'd have to grow a layer of skin so thick it would not break her heart, and later recognize that she was set apart. You're not that tall and you're not slim. Now, about your hair and that skin were often things that she would hear in subtle ways, year after year. So what's this little girl to do? What will she do to make it through? How can she turn frowns into nods? How does one go and beat the odds? For what she's longed and dreamed to be was seen as an anomaly. Well, clearly, this is not a fairy tale. My name is MaameYaa Boafo, and I am an actor. Now, honestly, it hasn't been that long ago since I started introducing myself as one. Being an artist from an African upbringing, you know how it goes when you approach family to say you want to pursue this. For me, some of the responses I would get was, oh, okay, so what are you really studying in school, though? We hear about the acting, but what is your real degree? Or I would get, oh, MaameYaa, nothing. How? Why? Are you trying to tell me that you went to America to study acting, theater? Lawyer, doctor, this is hobby. So needless to say, I would then respond with, well, I have a degree in journalism and I know French. My upbringing, most of my childhood was spent in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. We came right after the Civil War, and we went to a little American missionary school called Bingham Academy. And so I was exposed to American culture for the first time, and I was mesmerized by all these movies that we would see, and our teachers were American, and they had all this stuff, and I was just so enthralled by it. And there was one TV channel in Addis, and they would show some American TV shows, so a different world. I was like, wow, what would it be like to be a student at Hillman College, and how fun it would be to have ice cream and sing with your friends like on Kids Incorporated. But my favorite thing to do at school was, well, except for, studying, because I was a hard student, working student, I liked the library, and I was introduced to all these books, and my favorite was the Babysitter's Club. I loved the Babysitter's Club. It was like my Bible. I loved it so much. Yes, okay, y'all know what I'm talking about. I loved it so much I created a song about all the characters for a book report. I was the only one who did a song. And I stood there and I was singing in front of all my classmates, and I felt so comfortable up there. It's like, this is what I wanted to do. So I was always excited about class plays that would come up, but I never got any of the parts I desired. Kindergarten, gingerbread man. I wanted to be the gingerbread man. I got the role of sheep number 2. Bah, that was my line. Joseph and his amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. I wanted to be Joseph. I didn't care if it was for a guy or a girl. I wanted to be Joseph. I was a guy. I played one of the brothers, and this was my line. Now what do we do? 5th grade was Queen Esther. Now to play a historical biblical character, this beautiful queen who saved her people, had God's favor on her, I got the narrator. I was at the beginning, the end, and in the middle to say, what happens next? Well, what happened next was this pattern all throughout high school, but I still had this desire in my heart. So much so, even though the odds were against me, but I didn't have the guts to approach my parents and tell them I wanted to study acting for college. I mean, it didn't even make sense based on my reality. So I went to a liberal arts school called Hood College, and I studied broadcast journalism and French. There was no theater there, but I still had this desire in my heart. So I was like, I'm going to take it upon myself to learn as much as I can. I'm in the States and I have all these resources where I can watch films that I had heard about that are now at the library. I went to community theater and watched those plays. I read books, I read plays. There was a Shakespeare company down the street. I went there, volunteered, and they gave me my first professional role. Now, my character came at the end of the play, but I had a whole monologue as the courtesan in Comedy of Errors. And I learned so much by watching the professional actors there on stage. And I took it all in, and I was like, if I'm going to do postgraduate studies, it has to be acting. So this time, I did approach my parents. And they were like, okay, well, this is a master's degree, so you could teach acting. You could be a teacher. Okay, as long as you get a degree in it. Now, it sounds easy. I mean, of course, there's a lot of back and forth, and are you sure what to do? And, you know, my mother had her heart set on me being a reporter on CNN International. So I find myself in Chicago auditioning for graduate schools in pursuit of a master's in fine arts and acting. And I get into 0 degree programs. There was one school that accepted me in California, but it was not a degree program. But it was somewhere where I knew I could learn something, start off my journey or continue my journey and get that knowledge. So I made a deal with my parents. I was going to go there for 1 year. And while I was there, I was going to audition again for graduate schools. Now, this was a program that would travel in different towns. So it would be in San Francisco. And if I did not get in, I would come to Ghana, and whatever I have learned, I will find a job here and work here. So I go to California, and I start thinking, man, to do those applications again, find auditions again, put myself out there, possibly get rejected again. I'm not sure I want to do it. I kept going back and forth that I missed the deadline. My parents did not know this. Now, my parents have always been a familiar face in the audience when I was a kid doing school plays and whatnot. When I moved for college, that hasn't been a reality, but they happen to be in the audience today, so I wanted to do a quick shout out to my parents, and it's also my dad's birthday. Now, birthday boy over there once helped a Sudanese refugee family move to California. And in that process, one of their 5 children was left behind. And my dad made it a priority to bring them together, to reunite them. And since then, they've always been so grateful to my family. They are so welcoming to us. And you know, don't take anything for granted is what I've learned, just being in a home of a refugee aid worker. So I am now in California. I have missed the deadline. I live in LA. This family has offered to drive me to San Francisco. I'm a horrible driver. And they live in San Diego. That commute adds up to 10 hours. They were willing to drive me 10 hours to have this walk-in audition on Sunday. Because I didn't apply, I was like, I'm going to go and hopefully walk in and audition. We get there, and all of those auditions are scheduled. It happened to be that I overheard someone say that there were walk-in auditions down the street. At this time, it's late. We still have 10 hours to drive back. They have to go drop me off, then go back to San Diego and get ready for Monday, the following day. So I'm like, I prayed. I was like, God, please, just one school. At least I can tell my parents that I tried. So there's one school that has an opening. They just came out of lunch, so I quickly run there. And I go in, I do my audition. The auditor looks at me and says, I remember you from last year. You must really want this because you were in Chicago last year, and here you are in San Francisco. Now, the reason why I did not pick you was because you were too general. You need to be specific. Do it again. And I was like, wow, a second chance within a second chance. So I do my monologue again, and she's saying things while I'm doing my monologue to compel my character even more. And I had never experienced this, and my character went to a whole new level that I had never noticed, ever realized, and it was so fulfilling. And I was like, thank you, God. If I don't get in, at least I know that there's something in there that I can take and bring to Ghana and find a way to make something out of it. But a few days later, I got a call that I have been accepted to Rutgers University, Mason Grove School of the Arts. And then all my insecurities just came right in front of my face. I mean, what if the audition was a fluke? After all, she was coaching me through the whole thing. And what do I really know about acting? You know, I mean, I meet my classmates, and they are this talented group of people who had gotten their bachelor's in acting, or they had the roles that I never had. Their resumes look great. Mine had sheep number 2, narrator, a singing pirate in the background, and some other things. So I really got insecure. And I really let it get the best of me. My 3 years in grad school were the hardest years of my life because I got in the way of myself. So what I would say to you is, number one, love yourself, nurture yourself. Even when I was in Switzerland and Kenya and Ethiopia, I was usually in settings where I was one of the few black girls, and it was made very apparent to me that I wasn't like a whole bunch of other people, and it affected me. I mean, my parents would affirm me, but I was like, yeah, they're my parents, they don't count, they have to say that. So I took them for granted, and I gave more weight to what other people thought about me. Don't do that. Number two is get a support system. Now mine was my family. And I was overseas, so it was really difficult for me personally to to reassure myself when I kept feeling by myself the whole time. And so I invested in calling cards, and when the lights would go off and I'd have to use Skype to call their cell phone, I would remember that Skype is not free all the time. And it was a huge investment, but it paid off. So you have to make that investment in yourself. It might cost you, but in the long run, it will pay off. So by God's grace, prayers, I believe in the power of prayer, blood, sweat, and tears, I graduate. And now I have a work permit for 1 year. So now I feel pressured because I'm like, I have to make something of myself and, can someone sponsor me so I can stay here and all of that. And people have usually told me, oh, you're so lucky, you live overseas, you have the resources, your parents let you do art, life just seems so good overseas. And I'm like, well, what they don't understand is, homesickness is a disease for me. Finding a job anywhere is hard, especially as an actor where like 1% is really employed. And I was dealing with a whole new set of racism where people would, drop hints about my height, my weight, and all of that. And those are the people who had the power to hire me. So, I let that get to me. And I was thinking, maybe I do fall short. Maybe they were right about my height. So I get this job by God's grace. I get a job that does sponsor me, but it was not my dream job. But I understand it was a dream opportunity to get a visa. Now, this job entailed me to wake up at 2 in the morning, find my way to commute all the way to get to my place at 6 in the morning, put all this heavy stage equipment in a van, drive to different schools, perform, come back, put all the heavy stuff out, start my commute over again and again and again and again. And it was emotionally exhausting, physically demanding, but I'm like, you know what? I am doing what I love. This is what I signed up for. And out of, despite all the hardships and stuff, I am doing my passion, and I'm educating children about anti-bullying, and I'm loving what I'm doing. So you have to make the best of wherever you are. That is my advice. No matter where you are, you have to make the best of it. Also, nurture your relationships. By nature, I'm a shy person, and sometimes it was hard for me to approach people in my community because I always felt like I wasn't good enough. But you have to push through that. I actually found my community, my acting community, on Facebook. When I moved to New York, I didn't know anyone, so I found this group called Casting Actors of Color that was based in New York, and I started introducing myself to people, and I found a casting call there called An African City, which was created by a wonderful person, Nicole Matifio, who saw shows like Sex and the City and whatnot, and was like, how come there isn't anything like that for African women? So she created that. And because of her, she's employed people, catapulted my career, entertained people, and educated people who thought Africans were just impoverished poor souls with kwashiorkor. So she created this platform for herself, and there's a community amongst that, which I've also learned that in the creative community, you have to create for yourself as well. I mean, I just told you about Nicole, but there are countless others. There's Nia Vardalos. She was a Greek actress who not much was happening for her, so she wrote her story, got some great investors, and she created My Big Fat Greek Wedding, which also garnered her an Academy Award nomination. Gorinda Chadha directed Bend It Like Beckham, where it's about this Indian girl who is the star of basically a Western film, because that wasn't out there. Dr. Oheneba Boachie is an amazing spinal surgeon, But on top of that, he's also created and invented tools to help this surgery go quicker and be more efficient. And so there are countless others. Chinedu Echuro, he created HopStop, which is such a blessing living in New York. It's an app that shows you what trains to take and how to get there and how much time will take you. So if it's not there, you create it. And we have all the resources to be able to make that. If the resources aren't there for the tools, there are resources out there to put it out there, to ask people, what can I do to get to my dream? So take advantage of that and find that community and be confident with who you are, because they will love you for who you are. If you're confident, you will draw people to yourself, and you'll be helping each other and creating a community where, again, you can do whatever you want. So fairy tales are great. You know, they sparked my imagination as a kid. They all end happily ever after. But I think that real life is so much better. I mean, do you really want to be put under a spell to fall asleep for years until you wait on someone's kiss, which could be romantic or disgusting? You know, that is a waste of time to be asleep. Whereas in real life, you have all this time, again, all the opportunity, all the resources. There's no excuse anymore. Just ask. The internet is there. Ask around. People know people who could help you in this investment, and it's all out there. And so as Solomon said, as a man thinks, so he is. So be that person, and completely unapologetically. Thank you.